This episode of the Super Hype Gaming podcast is brought to you by the Dingle Gong. If you're anything like me, you're fucking sick of hearing jingle bells by now. So instead, at the end of the podcast, I will treat you to the Yuletide sounds of the Dingle Gong. Thank you, Dingle Gong. Welcome, everybody. This is episode 14 of the Super Hype Gaming podcast. I am your host, Michael Flanagan, and this will very likely be the shortest episode of this podcast that I ever fucking record. There was almost nothing to talk about. Like I predicted, after last week's State of Play and the Game Awards, there's not a whole lot of news this week, and probably next week as well with Christmas, and probably the next week after that as well as New Year's. So it's going to be light. It's going to be a light couple weeks as far as news and stuff goes. But we have a couple things, and luckily I've consumed a lot of media this week, so we can talk about some of that. So let's start with some of the stuff that I've been watching on Netflix. I watched Marriage Story, which is a movie featuring Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, and I really enjoyed this movie. I feel like this movie is really dependent on the actors that are in it. The actors do a really great job, and the script feels like it's almost like a vengeful this is almost like some vengeful story that somebody had to like get out and put in a story, because it's about this family. It's this husband and wife and their son, and it's about their story as the husband and wife split, and they want to make it an amicable split, but things kind of get nastier and nastier and nastier. And, both of them really suffer from it. And this is the kind of movie that would just be a total slog if the actors were not just, like, absolutely killing it. But luckily they were really, really good. I feel like I didn't know much about this movie going in. And I definitely feel like it's one of those movies where it's like, don't have your friend tell you all about it. Just go in, watch it. If you're into like character drama, it's really, really good in that regard. So that was a good one. And then I also started the show called Living with Yourself, which features Paul Rudd as himself and himself. And I started watching the show because I wanted something kind of lighthearted for when I come home from work and I don't feel like playing games or really watching anything too like intense. And so I thought this would be like kind of a lighthearted little show. It's got Paul Rudd. He accidentally gets cloned, basically. He tries to fix his life, and he gets cloned, and the clone is like a better version of himself. This show is like depressing as hell. I feel like the show has almost like an identity problem, because it definitely feels like it like can't figure out if it's funny or depressing, because like the better version just ends up doing all this shit, and I don't know. This show has like really weird music too. I feel like the music it's almost trying to be whimsical, but it like gives me anxiety. It's a lot of like high tension kind of music, and it's just like not the kind of, I don't know. It's a very strange show. I only made it like 4 episodes in. It's only 8 episodes, so and the episodes are only like 30 minutes long. So I might go back and finish that off, but I wasn't into it. And I like Paul Rudd a lot. Paul Rudd is one of my favorite actors, almost of all time. He's definitely in like the top 15. I don't know if he's in the top 10, but he's in the top 15. I really, really like Paul Rudd. But the show was just too strange for me. And I like strange shows. It's not that it's like, too strange in that way. It's just, I don't know. I wasn't into the vibes, I guess. So I kind of gave up on that. And instead I started watching The Office, which I've never watched The Office. Everyone has recommended The Office to me. I watched Parks and Rec, and I watched a couple seasons of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So I'm familiar with the format of the show. But also, excuse me, I literally just ate like 15 minutes ago a Cajun chicken sandwich from Zaxby's, and so some of it's still in my throat. So I'm having problems like pronunciating things. So apologies for that. I had to eat. I was out all day shopping. Not like heavy shopping. I was just buying like some clothes that I need. Nothing like I was not Christmas shopping. But yeah, I just ate, so that's why I'm a little weird with the speaking. But I started watching The Office. I'm sure all of you fucking give so many shits about what I had to eat for fucking lunch today too. That's how this podcast goes. So I watched The Office, and I'm on season 2. I'm like halfway through season 2, and it's funny too because you can look at the episodes on Netflix, and you can totally see like when the writer's strike happened. I think it like 2000. I don't know, when was that? Like 2012, 2013, because it's like all the seasons are like 22 episodes, 22 episodes, 22 episodes, 22 episodes, 14 episodes. There's like one season that's just like half as long, and it's like, oh, okay. I remember that when that writer's strike happened. That's probably when that was. But the Office is really like, and I like I'm totally like years and years and years late to this, but The Office is really cozy. It's a really great show to like put on and just kind of half pay attention to. Like I put it on, and I was doing some writing for Slouch on the Couch, and like I had it on, and I was like sitting on the floor playing with Dusty. So I really like that. I like having just a cozy little show to kind of just put on, because I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm not a big like passive watcher per se. I think the last show that I kind of watched like this was Star Trek: The Next Generation, and that's another great show to just kind of have on while you're doing other things, and just kind of like peek up when something crazy is happening, like, you know, Data's trying to fuck somebody. So normally when I'm like watching normally when I consume content, I want to be like all in, you know. I don't consume a lot of content where it's just like I'm half in, unless I'm like grinding or, you know, something like that. But most of the time I want to be fully focused on what I'm absorbing. But The Office is a really good show. I think, you know, you need one of those shows that you can just kind of have on and get through. So it's a good show for like after work. So that's all good. And then the final thing, is this the final thing? Yes. The final thing that I watched on Netflix, did a lot of Netflixing this week. I'm about 4 episodes into the Witcher Netflix series. And this show is interesting because I feel like your enjoyment of the show depends on various variables. I feel like so I've read the first 2 books. Actually, I've read the first 3 books of the Witcher series, and the first 2 books are a collection of short stories that kind of like jump around between time periods, and really it does a lot to set up the characters and kind of give you their personalities and kind of build the world a little bit. And then from the 3rd book on, the rest of them are all novels that focus around Geralt, mostly like Geralt and Ciri, and their kind of weird relationship, and, you know, destiny and all that shit. But I feel like this show, I feel like if you've read the books, you will get the most out of this show. I feel like if you've played the games, you will get the second most out of the show. And I feel like if you're not familiar with this world at all, if you're going in fresh, like, I don't think you'll like this show at all. Because there's a lot of details that are left out that, because I read the books, because the show is almost a beat for beat adaptation of the first 2 books. So it's all those little short stories, and it's really weird. I think the weirdest thing about the show so far is that it jumps between time periods kind of willy-nilly, but it doesn't really tell you that they're jumping between time periods. I think there's like one hint in season 4 that kind of clues you in if you're really paying attention. But it shows you these events. It shows you like 2 separate events between characters as if they're happening concurrently, and they're totally not, you know? One event is happening like 30 years in the past, but it doesn't really tell you or show you that. There's no like dates that pop up or like, you know, anything like that. So it's a little weird. I feel like if you were jumping into the show and didn't know anything about these characters or this world, it would definitely be very confusing. Um, but as someone who's read the first couple books, especially the books that these episodes are being directly translated from, it's really really cool. Obviously played The Witcher 3 as well, and the show is definitely a little low budge. Like Geralt's wig is definitely. So I think the wig that Henry Cavill wears. So Henry Cavill plays Geralt, and I think the wig that he wears when it's wet, like if he's like post battle, I think it looks really really good. It's just when he's like riding around and it's kind of just dry, and it looks so bad. It looks so cheap. And the swords, the sword props are like some of the worst fucking fake swords I've ever seen in my entire life. They look so bad. And just some of the like cinematography too is some of it's really good. Some of the fight scenes are really good, and then some of it's a little basic, and it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I've seen this in other shows, but I think Henry Cavill actually does a really great job with Geralt. Geralt is kind of a hard character to do, I think, because Geralt has that dry humor. Geralt is a cheeky fuck, right? Everyone in universe kind of spreads these rumors that Witchers are like emotionless, but it's not true. Like Geralt is just a cheeky fuck, and he says shit that's like really really funny. And I think Henry Cavill does a really great job of pulling that off, because I don't think it's an easy thing to pull off, because it's very subtle. I think you can do Geralt. I think it would be easy to do Geralt as just this grizzled like action hero almost. And I think it would be easy to do Geralt as this like cheesy, goofy character. There's definitely a middle ground that you need to nail. And I think Henry Cavill does a really great job of it. Some of his deliveries are really, really good. I've laughed quite a bit at some of the shit that he said. And yeah, the Witcher series is so interesting because it's almost about like subverting tropes, but then also leaning into tropes. A lot of the stories in the first two books, which are the short stories, they do a lot to kind of have a nice twist, and to kind of do something unexpected that you wouldn't see coming. Geralt has a lot of interesting solutions to problems, and he has a lot of interesting takes on the world that he lives in. But also, it leans into some tropes too. It leans into the whole, destiny and fate, and all the characters in the universe are like, it's ridiculous. They think it's stupid. They think destiny is stupid, but it does exist, and the characters kind of have to deal with that. So I'm only halfway through. Oh, the music also. The music is really interesting because, so like, the show is based off the books, not the games. Like I said, it's almost a beat for beat adaptation of those short stories. But the music is definitely very inspired by The Witcher 3. It's that, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like yodeling kind of, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's really really good. It's definitely very reminiscent of the games. But yeah, I'm gonna continue. I love the Witcher series. I love these characters. These characters are just so fun, and they're interesting, and it's fun to see them interact with each other. And I think they're doing a pretty good job with it. I don't think I could recommend this to just anybody. I don't think, like Game of Thrones, I feel like you can watch Game of Thrones without reading the books. I watched Game of Thrones without reading the books. I read the first book, but it does a good job of, I don't know, it's hard to describe, I think, but this show, The Witcher, is just, I don't think I could recommend someone who just hasn't read the books and can't fill in some of those details. Based on what they know. I don't know like what you would get from it. I think it would be kind of just a confusing whirlwind of stuff. But I like it. I think it's good. And I also watched another movie. So Redbox is discontinuing its. I think I talked about this in the last podcast. They're discontinuing their game rental service, and so they're having a big sale on various games. And you can go online and you can see what games are on sale, and then you can see like which box near you might have it. So I picked up a bunch of stuff. I actually picked up Jedi Fallen Order for $25, which is a pretty good deal. I mean, that game came out like a month ago, and I got it for more than half off. And it's unfortunate because you don't get it. You get the physical version of it, but you don't get the case. You just get the stupid Redbox sleeve. But I felt it was fine for what I picked up. So I got Jedi Fallen Order, and then I didn't know, but they also sell movies. You can just go and like buy movies instead of renting them. You can like straight out buy them. So I bought a couple of Blu-rays. I bought Spider-Man: Far From Home, which I actually missed in theaters. It's the first like MCU movie that I did not see in theaters, in a long time. So I picked that up for $5, and then I also picked up Avengers: Endgame for $10. So I watched Far From Home, and I really like it. I don't think it's as good as Homecoming. It does some things that I like, and it does some things I don't like. I think Mysterio is done very, very well. I think Jake Gyllenhaal does a fantastic job, and I think they do a really good job writing his character, because Mysterio is just an asshole. And one thing I kind of didn't like is that they gave him like a super kill boner. By the end of the movie, he's just like, I'm gonna kill all these fucking kids. I'm gonna murder them all. He's just like, dude, Jesus, settle down a little bit. Be a little more clever than just like, I just want to kill everybody. But I think it was a cool take on the character. He has like drones that project holograms, which showcase all his special effects, because Mysterio is just a big special effects idiot. So I think his costume looked really, really great. There's like a mind trippy section midway through the film, which is like really, really fucking good, where it's like basically just like Spider-Man going through this almost like a fucking carnival house kind of thing, where it's like all the mirrors, and it's all fake, but it's all the mirrors and stuff, and really, really cool imagery and stuff like that. And then at the end, when he uses the Peter tingle, I thought that was really, really cool. But there's some stuff I don't know. I think it does an okay. So I feel like this movie is I'm okay with their take on Spider-Man because the PS4 game exists. And the PS4 game does a really great job of one of my favorite things about Spider-Man and his kind of lore and stuff, which is that being Spider-Man is a sacrifice for Peter. Being Spider-Man means being a good Spider-Man means being a shitty Peter Parker, and vice versa. Being a good Peter Parker means being a shitty Spider-Man. And so he can't have both. He has to make sacrifices. And I think, obviously, the Sam Raimi movies do this really, 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 really well. The PS4 game does it really, really well. And the movies do, like, an okay job with it. Like, Aunt May already knows that he's Spider-Man. A lot of people already know that he's Spider-Man. And, in this universe, it doesn't really fucking matter. So it's kind of a bummer. And by the end, I definitely felt like, yep, that was another MCU movie, which is not totally bad. I mean, I was entertained the whole time. But it's weird having this come after Endgame, because Endgame, I even feel like some of the special effects are just like a big downgrade from Endgame, and obviously Endgame probably had a bigger budget. But it's just a little weird, I guess. But I think it was an enjoyable movie. It was an enjoyable Spider-Man movie. I wish he was still in New York. I think the best part of the movie is like the fucking minute and a half section at the end where he's swinging through New York City. It's a little weird to have him in Europe. I feel like the whole like Europe trip is just like some studio exec is like, hey, let's do something different and let's get Spider-Man out of New York. And so they're just like, oh, let's put him on a Europe trip, and Spider-Man goes to Europe. And that feels like it. It's kind of just thrown in there. It feels like it's thrown in there just to be different, just to have a different setting, just to be like, hey, we filmed in Europe. But still enjoyable. I'm still mostly happy with Tom Holland's take on Spider-Man. I hope he becomes like. I still feel he's definitely still a little reliant on Tony Stark and on the whole Iron Man legacy part. Because I think the biggest problem I have with the film actually is that in Homecoming, his big hero moment is when he's underneath all the rubble and he's looking at himself in the reflection of the little puddle, and he's pushing himself up and he's like, I'm fucking Spider-Man, I'm Spider-Man, I'm Spider-Man. And at the end, at that same moment in Far From Home, he's on like a helicarrier, and he's messing with like Tony's old gear, and he's building his new Spider-Man suit, and he's basically just like, I'm Iron Man, I'm the next Iron Man, I have to take over for Iron Man. And it's kind of just like, I don't know, I'm not really into that whole part of it. I hope he kind of becomes his own man during Spider-Man 3 or whatever the next crossover is that he'll have, since he'll definitely be back in the MCU, since they Disney and Sony remade that deal. But I hope he gets a little more confident. I want to see Tom Holland grow into like a confident Spider-Man, because right now he's still kind of the quirky, awkward Spider-Man, and that's always kind of a part of Spider-Man's character. But he's still kind of bumbling around a little bit, and so I definitely want to see. I hope they don't do that for all of Tom Holland's movies. I hope they let him be a little more confident and be a little more of an experienced Spider-Man. So that would be exciting. So I did that. It's a funny story. So I every couple months here at my apartment complex, they have like, I feel like it's every 3 months, they have like Member Appreciation Day, and they're like, they always put the piece of paper in my door. It's like, here's, there'll be free food and drinks and whatever. And I've never gone, because I always think it's probably lame. But they put one in. It's the one for December, which is, they kind of rolled it into like their Christmas party thing too. So it's like a Christmas party, Member Appreciation Party, and I decided to go. And so this event was from 5 to 7. So I showed up at like 5:40, like almost 6 o'clock. So like almost like halfway through the thing, right? And I walk in, and there's half a bottle of wine. It's like almost empty, this bottle of wine. And a one of those trays that's just like crackers and salami and cheese. And that was it. And there were 3 people like sitting at a table, and they had plates with their fucking crackers and salami on it. And I walked in, and there was no other food. There was no like hint that more food was going to be coming. Because when I hear food and drink, I think like at the very least pizza, right? Like, I don't know, like mini sandwiches or pizza or something, like at the very least. And like drinks, I think like, I don't know, maybe there'll be some sodas, maybe there'll be some beers, maybe anything other than like an almost empty bottle of wine. So I walk in, and I just kind of like turn my head left and right, and like have this little fucking scowl on my face, turn around and walk out, and just went home and had like mac and cheese, I think. So that was fun. I will never go to one of those ever again here, because I just re-signed my lease for another 13 months. So I've got many more months of them putting that piece of paper in my door, but I will not show up again. I'm sorry. And then I also played, let's see, I think the only thing of note that I've played, because I played some Death Stranding last week, but I mean, I don't really have much more to say about Death Stranding. I'm still just working through it. But this weekend, this Friday and this Saturday, I played, since I picked it up for $25 at Redbox, Jedi Fallen Order, which is Respawn's new Star Wars game. And I streamed this on Friday and Saturday. And this game, so Kotaku wrote an article about this game where they called it a delicious video game smoothie. And that is probably the most accurate description of this game that you can give. This game is a fucking video game-ass video game. It's got a lot of influences from a lot of games. One that I wasn't expecting is the Sekiro influence. And because I briefly glanced through some of the reviews when this came out, and before release, people were saying like, "Oh, this is Star Wars Dark Souls. It's like Dark Souls in the Star Wars universe." And some of the reviews were saying like, "No, it's not quite that." But it kind of is. But what it is that it surprised me is it's actually more Sekiro than anything. Because the game straight up just has the death blow mechanic from Sekiro, where you parry someone and then you attack and you do a death blow. I mean, it's 1-for-1 almost. It's insane. But it feels really, really good. It feels really good. Like, I think the lightsaber combat feels really, really fucking tight and really good. It feels really good to parry something. It feels really good to just slash around with your lightsaber and chop up bugs and stuff. So you can't dismember like human enemies, but you can dismember all the monsters and stuff. And so you'll be fighting a monster and you'll kill it and you'll just like slice its fucking face off. And it's awesome. It's really, really cool. You'll just like slice a bug in half. But this game is cool. It's got Uncharted influences. It's got Tomb Raider influences. It's got like the new God of War 2018. There's some of that in there. There's definitely some Dark Souls. I mean, there's more or less bonfires in the game where you sit down and level up, and if you rest, enemies respawn. Which it kind of makes sense in the Dark Souls universe. They kind of explain why that happens. But in Star Wars, it's like, okay, why are these enemies respawning just because I sat down? It's a little nuts. It's a little crazy, but and there's just so many like wild video game things in here. Like there's fucking bounce pads in one of the levels where you're just like bouncing around on bounce pads, like Sonic style. But it's really fun. There's some light exploration, and a lot of the loot that you found is actually 100% of the loot that you find is 100% cosmetic, except for some of the like you need to find like 3, health upgrades to upgrade your health, and then 3 force upgrades to upgrade that. So those have some gameplay stuff, and you can find more health stems. I guess those are not cosmetic either. But most of it is just like, you can customize your lightsaber. You can customize like the hilt. Pretty much every part of the hilt you can customize. And then your poncho, you can change the color of. You can change the color of your little droid friend. You can change the color of your ship. And that's all stuff that you find in the loot boxes. So it's fun. It's fun to explore just a little bit. There's not too much of it. Some people I've seen, and I think one of the Twitch tags too has this pegged as a Metroidvania, and I guess that's kind of true. I mean, the planets are all separated, so it's not one big map. You're traveling from planet to planet, and they're not huge. They're not very big, but there's definitely some parts of the planets where it's like you come back once you get an upgrade, like an ability that lets you go to a new area. But it's really, really cozy. I think it's a really cozy video game. I'm having a really great time with it. It's really funny to be playing like a good video game on stream again after playing fucking Scrat. But I like it. I think it's good. I'm glad to get this in before the end of the year. I had plans to play this game probably in January when it was on sale, but I picked it up for $25, so that's cool. And I will probably be finishing that off this Monday. I have Tuesday, Wednesday off, obviously, for Christmas from work. So I will probably stream Monday night and finish that game off so that we can finally move on to Metal Gear Solid 3, like people have been asking. But that's it for my week. So now we can move into the podcast proper. And I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 1, 2, 3 items. No, I have 4. I have 4 items. One of these I didn't quite write down yet. Let's fix that. Okay. So the first one is a news story that I'm actually really happy about. So Sony announced a DualShock 4 back button attachment. So basically, if you're familiar with like SCUF controllers, or Shark controllers. Basically controllers that are customized, or like Xbox Elite controllers, where they put the paddles on the back of the controller. And the paddles, they don't add buttons to games. What they do is that you can map those triggers or the paddles to different buttons. And this can have various different uses. I think one thing that's good is like in Dark Souls, it's hard to explain on a podcast, but like in Dark Souls, the circle button is the run button. And so if you want to run in a direction and also move your camera, you kind of have to like do the claw where your left thumb is on the left analog stick, your right thumb is on the right analog stick, and you're using your index finger to press the circle button. And so you're kind of like clawing the controller. And what the triggers allow you to do is to put that circle button on one of the triggers. So you can hold the controller normally with your index fingers or your pointer fingers on the bottom of the controller. And you can just press the trigger on the bottom, and you can still move and look at the camera or move the camera at the same time. And it's useful too for like first-person shooters. So like Destiny, where circle is the crouch button, or X is the jump button. So in Destiny 2, if you want to jump and move and aim, you have to do some funky stuff, because you have to again, you have to do the claw where your pointer finger is on the jump button, and then your thumb is on analog. And so this allows you to keep your pointer fingers kind of at a more comfortable position. And normally, I think Sony like licensed somebody to make them some Elite controllers, but it's not like really official. You know, it's not the Dualshock 4. It's just like a third-party PlayStation controller. And I wish they would do what Microsoft does with the Xbox controller, and just make a really nice Elite controller. But it's a little late for that now, I guess. So they're making this. It's coming out January 30th, and I think it costs $30. And I'm definitely gonna get one. It looks really nice. So it fits into the microphone, or the headset. Not the headset, god damn it. The headphone jack. So it plugs into there on the bottom of the DualShock. And then you can map the buttons, and it actually has a little LED that tells you what button is mapped currently. And you can have several different profiles, which I think is really, really cool. So you can just quickly change between those two or three profiles. And you can still plug in your headphones, because it plugs in, and then it still has another audio jack that you can plug into. So, and it's really nice. It's very form fitting to the controller. So I'm definitely gonna pick one up, and I'll let you guys know what I think about that. But I wish controllers would add, like, I wish the DualShock 5 would have paddles on the back by default. I think that would be great. I think controllers should have that out of the box, without having to pay for like an Elite controller. But I don't think they will. I think, you know, it might be a little confusing for a casual audience. But I'm excited. I mean, $30, like I'll pay for this little attachment. Sure, it's fine. So there's that. And then next up, just a quick little story, but Cadence of Hyrule recently got a free kind of update DLC. Cadence of Hyrule, if you haven't played it, one of my top 5 games of this year. Really, really great art, really great gameplay. It's got that Crypt of the Necromancer gameplay, but it's in like a kind of open, you know, Zelda kind of Link to the Past style world. It's not too big, but you're traveling around and defeating bosses and stuff like that. So this update adds a new character, a new playable character. And then it also adds, I think, just some other like little gameplay tweaks and features and stuff like that. So really cool. That game came out, I think, in July. So it's cool to see some support for that still. But yeah, that game, the music is really great. Art is really great. Gameplay is really snappy and fun. It's not too long. I beat this game in 2 sittings, and just a joy to play. I think I had a smile on my face the whole time while playing this game, and I'm a grumpy fuck, so you know it's probably good then. And then we've also got CD Projekt Red and the author of the Witcher series. I'll guess his name. I forget how to pronounce it. Andrzej Sapkowski. I can never say that right. They've had a little back and forth because basically when CD Projekt Red got the rights to make The Witcher 1 way back in the day, the author took a lump sum instead of taking royalties because he didn't believe that the game would do very well. I think he had been burned by a game studio previously, and he had burned. I think the Poland made like a movie based on The Witcher, and I think that happened before the first game from CD Projekt Red, and so he was kind of a little burned from licensing this property off. And then obviously, like, The Witcher 3 is this just massive fucking success. And so the author was a little salty that, like, he wasn't really making any money from that. And so I think he sued, and because there's some weird law in Poland where if you make a bad deal, you can kind of go back and fix it. And I'm not really super familiar, but basically recently the studio had a press release where they said they're solidifying their relationship with the author. So it seems like they've come to some new terms. I think CD Projekt Red has been pretty catering to this guy and getting him kind of what he feels he deserves. I think there was some detail where possibly his son was dealing with an illness, but I'm not 100% sure on all those details. But basically, it sounds like these two entities are reaching kind of a new agreement finally, and I don't really think this will mean much in terms of games. I think CD Projekt Red is done with The Witcher for now, but it's good to see them kind of making good and being friends. Everybody just needs to be fucking friends again. So that's that story. And then last up, this is the last thing that I have. Again, I told you guys this is going to be a short fucking podcast. The last thing I have is kind of funny. So Cats, the movie, was released this week, and it was met with just thunderous applause. Everybody loves this movie. But despite the fact that everybody loves Cats, there were some mistakes in the original film that the studio sent to like theaters and stuff. And so we are getting a patch for a movie. And this might be a first-time occurrence. I don't know if this is necessarily the first time this has ever happened, but definitely like on the scale and definitely like the first like time that we've been publicly aware of it. But apparently there was the file or whatever the fuck that they sent. The version that they sent to theaters was like unfinished and had unfinished effects. And one of the things that I'm seeing here is Dame Judi Dench. Her human hand and her wedding ring is just in the shot. Instead of it's supposed to be like a CGI cat hand, I guess. But it's just her regular fucking hand. And I just think it's really funny to have like a patch for a movie. And like Cats, I love musicals. I fucking love musicals. I'm all in. Cats is just like a surrealist fucking, like all of the creative energy was like put towards making Cats just like creepy as hell. And the movie is no different. It just looks bizarre. But please look forward to Cats Early Access and Cats Battle Pass. That Cats Battle Pass is going to come with like a free addiction to catnip or some shit. So yeah, Cats version 1.2. CGI fix. Live CGI fix. But yeah, that's it. That's all of the news stories that I have. Can you believe it? That is it. And we still went for like 40 minutes. I can't believe the shit. And I still had a lot to talk about. But that's gonna be it. That's gonna be the end of the show. I've got to go. Gotta go do some stuff. I gotta go rest. I'm getting like sick again. If you can't tell, I'm getting kind of sick again. I don't know. I've been sick more this year than I have like ever in my life. It's insane. But thank you guys for listening. Again, this podcast posts every Monday. You can find me on Twitch at SuperHypeGaming. You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter account is the best content that I put out. You can find me on Twitter at SuperHypeGaming. If you have any stories or any questions or hate mail that you want to send me for me to read on the podcast, you can send that to superhypegaming@gmail.com, and I'll collect all those and put them in if I can. But yeah, that's it. That's all I have. Thank you guys. Hope the next couple of weeks are a little more busy as far as video game news or just, maybe stuff that I'm doing. I'm gonna spend some time. It's nice having time off kind of back to back. So I've got time off for Christmas and time off for New Year's. Christmas I'm gonna spend just kind of working through consuming some stuff. So I want to finish off the Witcher TV show, and I want to kind of definitely put some more progress into Death Stranding. So those are my main two goals for the Christmas break. And then on New Year's break, so I have New Year's Eve wait, is that right? I have the 1st and the 2nd off, I believe. Yeah. No. I have the 31st and the 1st off. But I took the 30th off. So I have a 5-day weekend basically. And I'm gonna try and spend some time. I have some stuff I need to do for Slouch on the Couch, so the little dumb show that I'm making. And I think if I can spend some time on that, if I can get all 5 of those scripts done, then I can spend all of February filming, and then that can come out in March. That's my goal right now. But I want to spend some time on that, so I might do some crazy streams during that time. You might see a stream where I build a Muppet for reasons. So maybe look forward to that. I also thought about doing a stream. I love building Lego sets, so I might do a stream where I build a fucking Lego set during New Year's. Maybe we'll build a Lego set we'll start at 11 and try to finish before midnight. But yeah, that's it. That's episode 14. Thank you guys for listening, and I will see you all next week.
Okay, this is Robbie Plummer, Mike Tyson, and
I
Darren
hope
Frank.
he doesn't bite my ear off. 1, 2, 3.